Well, a very happy Sunday to you. I'm so glad that you're here today. Welcome to Landing Place. In the summer, we always have lots of guests. And so some of you are here with family, some of you are here just checking things out. But if you're a guest today, I just want to say, hey, special welcome to you. My name is Mark, if we've not had a chance to connect. And we're in the middle of a summer series we've got going on called What He Said. We're in week 5 of 8 today. We are at the very, very back of our Bible. We're in the book of James. James is the half-brother of Jesus. He was leading a church in Jerusalem about 15 to 20 years after Jesus' resurrection. And James repeats a lot of what Jesus said, thus the title of the series, What He Said, referring to Jesus. Each week, James is challenging us to live out our faith, that it's more than just knowing something, it's actually doing something. And so today we're going to talk about wisdom. We're going to talk about how we make decisions. So I'll begin with this question. Have you ever had a friend, maybe a family member, a coworker, and you were watching them in the middle of the decision-making process, and you thought to yourself, I don't think this is going to work out for you the way you think it's going to work out? Ever been there? You kind of watch them and they're making this decision and thinking, oh man, I don't think so. And you know, there's so many different scenarios here, but let's say you got a friend who's going to quit their stable job to chase after a TikTok offer for a 6-figure salary in 2 months. And you think to yourself, I don't think that works that way. I don't think that's going to happen. Have you ever had a friend get in a relationship and you can see all sorts of red flags and you think this is not a good relationship for you to get in, but they do it anyway, right? Hey, Rihanna, do you think Chris Brown is the best choice for you? Because I don't think so. Or maybe you have some friends who are going to stretch financially and they're going to go after a house and you know full well that this house is going to wreck them. It's going to take half their salary. They're not going to have money for anything else. And you're just kind of shaking your head thinking, what are you thinking? Have you ever noticed how easy it is to watch other people make decisions and have incredible wisdom around their decisions? I can tell you that ain't gonna work. Oh, that's totally gonna work. And while we're doing that, people are watching the decisions that we make and they're shaking their head going, I don't think that's gonna work out the way you think it's gonna work out. Like, what is it that makes us so incredibly discerning about other people's decisions but not so much ours? Well, James would argue that all of our decisions kind of make sense in the moment based on the wisdom that we trust. That we all have a certain amount of life wisdom, and sometimes the longer you've been around, the more wisdom you have, sometimes not. But James would say that, hey, wisdom is a big part of this decision-making process. So I want to begin today with just defining wisdom. What is wisdom according to James? I think he would define wisdom as something like this. It's insight that grasps reality as God sees it. And then it moves in harmony with his will. So James would say there's 2 parts to wisdom. Number 1 is knowing what God would do. And the second is then doing that. Understanding God's grasp on reality and bringing our life into alignment with that knowledge. When we do that, we make good decisions. We exercise good wisdom. And when we don't, not so much. James would argue that wisdom is a deep thing. It's an under the surface thing. We don't see wisdom in people, but we know whether they have wisdom or not based on the decisions that they make. One of the most recognizable things in the world is the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Anybody been to Pisa? Anybody? Yeah, bunch back be there. Yeah, anybody take the picture? Keep that thing up. Leaning Tower of Pisa has been there 800 years. Been leaning around that long. They've done all sorts of study on why exactly is the Leaning Tower of Pisa leaning. And it turns out it's not architecture, it's not design of the building, it's not top heavy. It turns out that they built it on soil that was not stable, shifting soil, which we totally understand here in Colorado, right? We build all sorts of things on shifting. We have to pack. They did not do the prep work. And so this beautiful tower, this building that they created, there's nothing wrong with what's above ground. All the problems happen underground. And James goes, man, that's how wisdom is. It's the things that are below the surface that cause things above the surface to go sideways. And so James is going to start to unpack wisdom for us, and he's going to give us two sources of wisdom today. He's going to go, there's this source that comes from God and this source that does not come from God. And he's basically going to ask the question, I'm not really that concerned how you look on the outside above the ground, because what's going on underground is going to be what decisions you make. And so James is going to ask this question to all of us today. He's going to say, which wisdom is leading me? Am I choosing the wisdom that comes from God or the wisdom that comes apart from God? And he's going to define both of those. Big idea for today. If you catch nothing else from today, take this sentence home. The wisdom we trust, the wisdom that we trust is going to determine the life that we live. We are a product of our decisions. And the wisdom that we trust and the decisions that we make are leading us somewhere. They're taking our life in a certain direction. And James is saying, man, the direction your life is going to take will largely come down to the wisdom we exercise and where we get that wisdom from. So today, let's talk about wisdom through the book of James. If you have a Bible with you, go ahead and open it up. We're going to be in James 3 today. If not, the verses are going to pop up behind me. What he said about wisdom. Number one, wisdom shows up in our walk. James 3:13, if you are wise and understand God's ways. Now, James is writing this in Greek because Alexander the Great took over between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and all of the known world around the Middle East spoke Greek. And so this would have been written in Greek, and he would have used this word. He would have used the word Sophia or Sophos. And Sophia, so if you know somebody named Sophia, you can go, you are wise. You are named after wisdom, literally named after wisdom. It's where we get our word philosopher, love of wisdom. It's where we get our word sophisticated. So when James pulls out sophos as a word, people immediately think, and remember the culture we're writing in, we're 2,000 years ago, a lot of people are illiterate. There's educated and not educated. So immediately people in their mind are thinking, oh, sophos people, wise people, they're the educated people. They're the philosophers. They're the scholars. They're the people who know things. And James immediately goes, not so much. You can know something and still not be wise. He goes on to say this. If you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life. James goes, look, it's not what you know, it's what you do. This is a big theme throughout the book of James, that people can listen to Jesus' words and go, yes, that's a good idea. Yes, I think we should do that, but not do it at all. And James goes, those people are knowledgeable, but they're not wise. And knowledgeable and wise are two very, very different things. So I want you to imagine you go home today and you hop on the internet and you get onto Amazon. For some of you, that's not a big stretch at all. You go, Mark, that's exactly what my afternoon involves, right? You get yourself some brand new Ray-Ban Meta glasses. Have you seen these? Pretty cool, a little creepy. There's a camera in the glasses and a microphone, and it records everything you see. And you haven't really read the instructions. You get your Meta glasses by this afternoon because Amazon can do that. And you start wearing them on Monday morning. You show up at your workplace just all casual. What you don't realize is everything that you see and everything that you say is being recorded. It's going up in the cloud. For the entire week, every text that you read and texted, every email you read and emailed back, every phone call, every conversation with your spouse, every conversation with your kids, every conversation in traffic, everything you looked at on your phone. And through the brilliance of AI, it's going to take your entire week and it's going to capture the worst 3 minutes of your life. And we're going to play it on Sunday morning. Anybody just a little nervous about that? Anybody think that feels like a little bit of invasion of privacy, a little twitchy? Wouldn't that be terrible? And then we're going to ask people, hey, based on the video that you just saw, would you consider this person wise or not? Probably not, right? And that's what James is asking. He's saying, hey, look, wisdom doesn't always show itself in the big things. It shows up in everyday life. It shows up on how you interact with your spouse. It shows up on how you interact with your kids. It shows up how you interact with your coworkers. It shows up with what you look at on your phone and on your computer. It shows up in every way. And he said, man, wisdom is going to reveal some things about how you live your life. It is going to show up. Our culture says that wisdom is all about being more informed. But James would say it's actually all about being more transformed. That we can be knowledgeable, but not transformed. We can know what Jesus said, but not put it in action. And honestly, James would say, actually, that's just as bad. We live in a world where knowledge is at our fingertips. Thanks to AI and the internet, we can find out the answer to anything. We are the most knowledgeable generation that has ever lived on the planet. But I would ask you this question, are we the wisest? Not so much. Still a lot of bad decisions going on. And so James goes, look, knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. He goes on, verse 13. If you are wise and understand God's ways, okay, that's grasping the reality of God's world. Prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. James said there's an interesting connection here between humility and wisdom. Now, he's introducing a topic that we're going to spend all next week on. Pastor Gabrielle is going to teach. He's going to talk about he's going to talk about humility and pride. Those are going to be the two big topics. So James is just baiting us a little bit, but he said, hey, there's a connection between humility and wisdom. Jesus is the ultimate picture of wisdom, and he's the ultimate picture of humility. What is humility? Humility is strength, but it's under control. No one would define Jesus as weak or meek, but they would say he was humble. Humility means that I can walk into a room and I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. It means that I can learn from anybody in this room, that I could serve anybody in this room. James said that's wisdom. And humility is one of the precursors. It's one of the forerunners. It's one of the couplings with wisdom. You have to have a certain amount of humility to be wise. And he reminds us this, that the wisdom we trust determines the life that we live. So now James is going to break into two factions. He's going to say, let's talk about the wisdom that does not come from God first. And then let's talk about the wisdom that comes from God. So, number 2, false wisdom leads to destruction. We go on to James 3:14, the next verse. But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. Once again, we find James going back to this concept of root and fruit. We've seen it throughout the series, that underneath the surface determines what happens above the surface. He talked about the root of salvation leads to good works. Then he talked about what's in our hearts determines the words that we say. And now he's saying the wisdom that underlies our heart and the wisdom that's underneath is going to determine the decisions that we make. So he said, we need to talk about two roots that are very, very dangerous. And the first is bitter jealousy. What is bitter jealousy? Well, it's more than envy. It's more than just straight up jealousy. Jealousy is, wow, you have a really nice car, and I really like that car. I wish I had a car like that too. That's just jealousy. It's not what James is talking about. He's saying, you've got a really nice car, and I don't, and I'm really unhappy that you have a nice car. I'm not happy for you. Why you, and why not me? I want a nice car like that. You can't be happy for someone with bitter jealousy. It's a very self-centered. It's a very, I want this for myself. So you go home this afternoon after you're done ordering your Ray-Ban Meta glasses, and you tell yourself the biggest lie you're going to tell yourself all day. I'm going to scroll Instagram for 5 minutes. Because that has never been done in the history of the world. No one has ever scrolled Instagram, but let's just say 5 minutes, you scroll through Instagram, and on the first screen that you hit, somebody that you know got a promotion. And you just got overlooked for a promotion at your job. And you think to yourself, man, why did they get a promotion? Why didn't I get a promotion? You're not happy for them. You are bitterly jealous. And then the next person you flip to and look, somebody's posting their summer vacation pictures. And they got white sand and this turquoise water. And you're thinking, I didn't take a vacation like that. Well, that stinks. And the next picture you're scrolling through, somebody just remodeled their kitchen and your kitchen is a disaster. And you think, wow, my kitchen never looks like that. And it's never gonna look like that. And the next picture you scroll to is a couple celebrating their anniversary. And you think to yourself, man, we have never gone out to dinner like that. And we've never looked like that. And we're never gonna look like that. Like the ship has sailed. And why them? And why not me? And then you flip one more and there's this perfectly curated family and the kids are all clean and they got clothes on and like, you think of my kids, man, we never look like that. And 5 minutes ago, your life was fine. And now you're not enough. And you feel bitter jealousy. And James goes, hey man, that is a root. Because he said so many decisions that we make in our lives, and I want you to think about the decisions you make in your lives. So many decisions are based on bitter jealousy. We buy things we don't need. We put other people down. We're not happy for them. Bitter jealousy always has this sense of competition. It always has this, we're in a game and I'm losing and you're winning and I can't stand that you're winning. And so I'm gonna do whatever I need to win this game. And James said, man, that is the root of a lot of bad decisions in our world today. He said, man, really be careful. One of our presidents, Teddy Roosevelt, said comparison is a thief of joy. And I think James would say, Teddy, true dat. You nailed that. The minute we begin to compare, we lose joy. We lose it. And it's a horrible thing. And James says, look, that's not the kind of wisdom you want to follow. But he doesn't stop there. He said, hey, there's another thing with bitter jealousy. It's selfish ambition. I love this because selfish ambition, if you go back to the Greek, is the phrase that they used when politicians were running for office. James said there are politicians that are running for office who are not about the people. They are only about themselves and power and money. And man, I am so glad that we don't have that problem today. I'm so glad that in 2,000 years, humankind has evolved, that our politicians are altruistic and they're only thinking about our good. I don't know about you. I read the Bible and I'm thinking like, you could have written this yesterday. You could have written this week. And what it reminds me is there's no expiration date on truth. Truth is truth. Truth is truth yesterday, today, and forever. 2,000 years from now, if Jesus has not come back yet, people are going to be reading this and going, yep. No, not all politicians are bad. I don't want to throw all politicians under the bus. But I get what James is saying. He's saying there are people who have a selfish ambition problem. And it's really about them. And it's not just politics. It invades every aspect of our lives. It invades our families. I want to have you raise your hands because they may be here, but is there somebody in your family that when you get together, like in the summer or at Christmas, it is just miserable because somebody always has to have their own way? Just always, and there's conflict, and there's all sorts of problems because I got to do it this way because they just not make waves. It creeps into families. It creeps into workplaces. It creeps into churches. I meet with so many pastors, and sometimes it is the pastor, and sometimes it's a board, and sometimes it's a ruling body over them or the congregation where it becomes somewhere about money or power or who holds the keys to things. And it's really not about the kingdom anymore. It's about selfish ambition. And James said, the minute it becomes about us, and there's some similarities between bitter jealousy and selfish ambition. The minute it becomes about us, it's a bad decision. Coaches know this. Coaches know that there's no I in team, right? I was in Chicago during one of the greatest runs in all of basketball. I was there during the Michael Jordan years. It was an amazing time to be alive. They won 6 championships in about a 10-year period. They won 3, took a little break, then won 3 more. It was an awesome time. I had an opportunity to go and watch Michael Jordan play the United Center. And oftentimes people will go, well, of course Chicago Bulls win. They had Michael Jordan, one of the best players in the history of the game. Of course they're going to win championships. But I will tell you, one good player does not win championships. Period. Because if you got one good player, they can double team Michael Jordan. Shoot, they can triple team Michael Jordan. And if nobody else on your team can shoot and score, you're not going to win championships. Little known fact about Michael Jordan, he's number 58 in terms of the all-time leader list of assists. He knew that if he was double teamed, he knew that if they were on him, he knew he could go to Ronnie Harper, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, or Tony Kukoc, and they would all win. Because that's what great teams do. can't win with selfish ambition. And James just keeps coming back to this. He goes on to say this in the next verse in 3:15. For jealousy and selfishness, I want you to notice this. He keeps bringing these two things up. He's not letting this rest. Jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. In case you wondered, he just wants to make it really clear. These are not from God. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. Those are really strong words. Earthly, meaning temporary. James goes, look, a lot of the decisions we're making, folks, they're super temporary. They're not gonna last. They're really short term. You're making decisions on really short term things. You're getting caught up in this world when frankly, this world is a mist and it's a breath and it's a moment. Then he calls it unspiritual. Why? Because it's not Holy Spirit directed. Our lives are not in line with God's lives. But then he calls it demonic, and that's a big word. Why demonic? I want to take you back to heaven. There was a worship leader in heaven. Bet it's always the worship leader. I'm sorry. We do not have this problem at Landing Place Church, but you know who did have this problem? God. Satan was the worship leader. And there were two things underlying his motives. Number one, everybody's worshiping God and I want them to worship me. I am bitterly jealous. And you know what? I want to make the rules around here. I am selfish ambition. Bitter jealousy and selfish ambition got Satan kicked out of heaven. James says, man, that is the root of everything. It really, if we put it in a word, it's pride. And again, Gabrielle's gonna unpack this next week about pride and humility. This word pride is really the root behind bitter jealousy and selfish ambition. And he said, man, we always have to be careful because that's demonic. The wisdom we trust determines the life that we live. So what's the alternative? If that's not it, and clearly it's not it. Actually, before we even get to that, I got to unpack this more. Let's go to the next verse, 3:16. Wherever there's jealousy and selfish ambition, he mentions this again, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. James said, when decisions are based off of bitter jealousy and selfish ambition, you're gonna see a continuum of things happen. And I just want you to think about the world that we live in today. The first thing you're gonna see is confusion. How many think we got some confusion going on in our world today? Then you're gonna see chaos. Anybody see chaos? Then there's gonna be conflict, which is gonna cause division. And ultimately that's gonna lead to destruction. James said, wherever there's bitter jealousy, wherever there's selfish ambition, you will go from confusion to chaos, to conflict, to division, to destruction. We see it everywhere. We see it in our cities. We see it in our government. We see it in our marriages. We see it in our parenting. We see it in our workplaces. We see it in our churches. It is everywhere. James said it's infected us. So what's the alternative? Clearly that's not where we want to get our wisdom. We go to number 3. Jesus is the perfect picture of wisdom. James goes on in 3:17. But wisdom from above, sharp contrast. We've been talking about wisdom from below. Now we're going to talk about wisdom from above. Is first of all pure. It's also peace-loving. It's gentle at all times. It's willing to yield to others. It's full of mercy, fruit of good deeds, shows no favoritism. Eric talked about this in week 2. And it's always sincere. James just gave us a picture of his half-brother Jesus. Is Jesus pure? Absolutely, never manipulation. Is he peace-loving? He mended broken relationships. Is he full of mercy? He forgave Peter. He forgave those who forgave him on the cross. Is he gentle? He welcomed children in. Nobody would talk to children. Nobody gave children the time of day. He welcomed in children and women and people who were caught in all kinds of things. And James looks to his half-brother and goes, you know who's the perfect picture of wisdom? It's my half-brother. It's Jesus. Jesus actually, he planted peace. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But he starts to unpack this amazing attributes of Jesus. And I would ask you, is there anybody in your life who's not Jesus, but you would say, you know what? I have somebody in my life that I think is really wise. I think they make really good decisions. I think they really know what God is doing and they bring their life into align that. For me, it was my dad. He's not living anymore. He's in heaven. But it's interesting. I would consider my dad really wise, but my dad is not somebody that anybody would look to. No one would have ever called my dad successful. He's a dairy farmer. He graduated high school, didn't have education beyond that. He never made a lot of money, was never super successful in farming. We were kind of subsistence farmers. He never had a platform. He never spoke in front of people. He never had huge influence. But my dad really loved God, and he really loved people. And he had this wisdom about him, and not in every area of life. There were some areas of my life my parents just weren't very wise in. Money was one of them. But in so many areas, particularly as he got older and I got older, I would just think, man, my dad is really wise. I want to be like him when I grow up. And this is what James is saying is, sometimes we equate wise people with successful people and influential people and the movers and the shakers and the influencers. But he said, actually, wise people are just a safe place. They're a place where people love God and love people. And when people actually do what Jesus said, sometimes it's not very flashy. Sometimes it's not very out there. Now, I will tell you this, everybody who knew my dad knew that he loved God and loved people. There was never a question. And he did have influence, he just didn't have influence like other people have. Who in your life is really wise? And is there anybody looking at you thinking, they're really wise? James goes on with one more point, and he says this: we're planting our future. He goes right back to this concept of root and fruit. He takes it to an agricultural picture. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. Again, I grew up on a farm in the middle of Illinois. We grew corn because that's what cows eat. And I will tell you, farming is one of the most faith-filled events you can possibly be a part of. Because you go out in the spring and you plant seeds. And it looks like this. You just have a field. You get done and it looks like that. And you wait about a week or so and you go out and look at your field and it looks like this. Absolutely nothing has changed. And you have no idea what's going on underneath the ground. None. Could be growing, could not be growing. You could have missed a row. You could have missed a whole section. You don't know. You go back out in like 2 weeks and it looks like this. And you're praying. And you've planted seeds, but you know that planting and harvesting don't take place in the same season. And finally you go out in about a month or so and you see this picture and you go, whew. The seeds that I planted are starting to come up. They're starting to grow. I'm starting to see some visible evidence of the seeds that I planted. We're all in a season right now, and I don't care how old you are. We're all in a season right now of both planting and of harvesting. We're harvesting seeds that we've planted in the past. Some of those seeds may be really good things we planted. Some of the things we're harvesting right now are things that we planted that weren't so good. They weren't good decisions. They weren't wise decisions. James says, look, we can't change what we've already planted and we're harvesting now, but what we can do, we can absolutely be planting things now that you're going to be harvesting in the future. What are we supposed to be planting? James said, if you got to pick, plant peace. In this world that we live in that is so divided, so much hatred, so much division, so much chaos, so much confusion, James says, plant peace. Those are wise words. Because how many of us are really planting peace? And he goes back to Jesus and he goes, look, Jesus didn't just come to teach wisdom because it's not about knowledge. Jesus came to become our wisdom. Not only did he teach it, but he became a role model. And the truth is, we can't exercise wisdom without Jesus. Without the Holy Spirit, it's not natural for us. In the culture we live, human nature, we will be gravitationally pulled into bitter jealousy. We will be gravitationally pulled into selfish ambition. We need help. And James says the first thing we have to do is just admit, you know what? I am not naturally a good decision maker. I don't naturally plant peace. I'm going to need God's help. I want to reject the wisdom of the world, the wisdom that got Satan kicked out of heaven. I want to reject selfish ambition. I want to reject bitter jealousy. I want to reject pride. And like Jesus, I want to be humble and plant peace. And so this week, we'll all make so many decisions this week. So many decisions. Some will be really small, very simple. Some will be far more complex. But as you stand before a decision this week, I want you to think of the words of James. And I want you to do what I would call a 5-second pause. Before you decide, just take 5 seconds and stop and think and ask this question. Which wisdom is leading me right now? Is the decision I'm about to make, is the thing that I'm about to say, the thing that I'm about to do, the thing that I'm about to post, the text that I'm about to send, is it based on the wisdom of God or the wisdom of the enemy? Because James said it'll be one of the two. And the wisdom that we trust will determine the life that we live. Let's pray. God, thank you for James' life. I thank you for the challenging words that he puts in front of us. He just calls out all of our stuff. And God, today we just recognize that we're so flawed, that we all lean toward bitter jealousy. We all lean toward selfish ambition, and we've made a lot of decisions based on those two things. So first of all, we just confess that to you, and we ask for your forgiveness for the seeds that we have planted that have not been from you. God, will you give us wisdom, the ability to be able to grasp the reality as you see it, and then bring our life into harmony, that it would be more than knowledge in our lives, that it would be action in our lives, that it would be fruit that comes from the right root. God, only you can change our hearts. And so we submit ourselves to you today. And we say, will you give us the wisdom? Because in chapter 1 of James, it said, if any of you lack wisdom, simply ask God, and he will give it to you. Today we ask for your wisdom. We love you, and we thank you, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen and amen.